I want to start with a story this morning. A little boy was in his sand pit. And as he's digging in his sand pit, he discovers, just under the surface of the sand, a rock. And as he digs around the rock, it's a reasonable sized rock. And he starts to excavate around this rock. It's a round rock. And he digs and he digs and he digs, and finally he's got it to a place where the sand is removed from the edges and he can now rock it. And so this is in the wrong place. He decides it's got to go. So he starts pushing with this rock. And he gets behind it with all the force he can muster, and he starts to push. And he gets it to move, and he starts to get it up out of the hole, but it comes back down again. So he tries again. And this time he really gets it, he gets his knee in there, and he pushes, but he's unsuccessful again. So he tries again. And his father is standing at the window of the house looking out at the sandpit and watching his son work on this rock and try and remove it from the sandpit. Eventually he sees his son sit down, totally frustrated with this rock, unable to shift it out of the sandpit, and he starts to cry. So his father goes out to his son and he says to his son, "Why didn't you use all your power to remove the stone?" And with tears running down his cheeks, he says, "Dad, I did. I pushed with my hands and my feet, but I just couldn't do it." "No, son," his father answered, "you didn't call for me." With that said, his father reached down and picked up that rock and shifted it out of the sandpit. As we live our lives from day to day, do we rely just totally on our abilities, on our strength, our gifts, our talents? A little while ago I came across a Bible text and it stuck with me. You know how you read one of those Bible texts and it impresses you, and this one impressed me. It's found in Matthew 4:19. And you will all know it, I'm sure, when I mention it. And this is what it says. And it's related to Jesus when he was walking beside the Lake of Galilee, and there was fishermen working there, doing their daily activities. And he says to Simon Peter and to his brother Andrew, and he says, "Come, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." And as I thought about this verse, "Come, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men," first comes the invitation, then the vision that Jesus has for them. You know, we're all followers of Jesus here this morning. That's why we're here. We accepted Jesus as our Lord and Saviour, and our desire is to follow him. And then comes the vision. You know, as you look across some of the Bible characters, I want you to think of Jonah, who God came to Jonah and asked him to go to Nineveh. So he went down to the wharf, hopped on a ship, and went the other way, as far as he could. When you think of Moses, when God came to Moses in that burning bush, and Moses came near, God said to Moses, "I want you to go down to Egypt, back to Egypt, and lead the children of Israel out." And he said, "I can't speak." And then there's Jeremiah. God came to Jeremiah and he said to Jeremiah, "I want you to be my prophet. I want you to go and speak for me." And Jeremiah said, I'm too young and inexperienced." All these guys, when God came to them, they're followers of God, they all went, "Too hard." But we know the ending. We can look and see the ending of what happened. Jonah eventually did follow God's asking. He went to the city, he became a great evangelist for God, because they all, as a city, turned to God. Moses, we know, did go down to Egypt. He did lead the children of Israel and became one of the greatest leaders that Israel ever had. Jeremiah did follow God with and became his prophet, and he too was a great spokesman for God where he was. They were followers, but they hesitated when God first asked them to do something. Did you all get the Imprint magazine? The Imprint magazine? Not only has it got camp applications for this next year, but it also gave us, in page 2 and 3 and a little bit on page 4, a write-up about the team who went to the Philippines to share him, the Share Him trip. And there was a lovely photo there, and the Bennetts already know because their son Isaac features in this photo. And it's amazing. But I want to share with you this morning, and sorry I've shared with the youth already, but I'm sure you can listen and hear it again, a little bit of what two of the girls have written here, because I want you to think of Jonah, think of Moses and Jeremiah. And here's Hayley Dean, and this is what she said about her trip over there. I'm not someone who, and I've picked bits and pieces, if you want to read the whole lot, you can do that at home. I am not someone who enjoys public speaking. I'll get up and do it if I have to, but I don't like it. If I am speaking, it's best if I don't hold anything as my hands shake profusely. It amazes me that I actually signed myself up to go on the trip. I tried my best not to think about what I was actually going over there to do. I put it in the back of my mind and wouldn't let it surface. On the days leading up to the trip, it was difficult. The devil was after me. He was playing mental games and I was just ready to throw in the towel. However, I had paid for it and I was going, albeit a little bit begrudgingly at the start. When I got up to preach that first time, it shocked me how incredibly calm I felt. I was nervous and it was strange. I wasn't nervous and it was strange. I could only equate it to God. God was with me. I was his broken vessel and he was with me, equipping me and using me. Now it wasn't always smooth sailing. The devil would still try at times to attack. He would try and attack me mentally. There were times when I was preaching that my mind would start to wander. Am I doing this right? Are they understanding? Am I taking too long? Are they listening? And in those moments of uncertainty, I had to focus back on God, pray and acknowledge it was him, not me, that was reaching these people. I didn't need to worry. Do you get her experience as she was over there? One more, Megan Forbes also wrote, and this is what she wrote. As someone who gets nervous going up the front of church to announce a hymn or to pray, I say going on a trip to preach 11 sermons over 9 days was out of my comfort zone is an understatement. But I am glad it was out of my comfort zone, as it forced me to rely on God like I never ever have before. Share Him really strengthened my faith in God as I witnessed his power at work firsthand. Every night before I preached, it seemed there was something designed to stop me, whether it was power outages, malfunctioning computers or data projectors, transport problems, or even losing my voice one night. God in his power and grace worked a miracle for the meetings to continue every night. The greatest miracle, however, and the most exciting part, was witnessing so many people give their lives to the Lord for the first time. What an amazing experience these two girls had. And I've heard Isaac talk about his experience there. And he was just beaming. He really had a great time, but he had a time working with God over there. Both girls admitted how unworthy or unqualified they felt and how much they felt it was God working through them. Which comes to the second part of Matthew 4:19. So there's the invitation, follow me, and I will. And that's the bit that really affected me as I read this verse. I will. This is a commitment that Jesus is making to Simon, Peter and Andrew. Let's just call him Simon. Simon and Andrew. He will. He will empower. He will teach. He will lead by example. He will. He is making a commitment to them to make them fishers of men. Sure, we know Peter made some mistakes along the way, but eventually he became the leader of the early church. God has asked us to be fishers of men, and success will only come when we're connected with him, empowered by him. How often do we try and shift the rock by our own effort when help is there if only we will ask? We serve an all-powerful God who is happy to shift the rock if we ask him. Jesus says, I will, and that takes a heavy load off us. It's not all about me. Sometimes we think reaching out to people is our job, but it's about God working through us. He will look after the results. Ours is to step up like those young people who went to the Philippines. Doesn't mean we won't be free of a few nerves. Paul was able to say in Philippians 4:13, I can do everything through him who gives me strength. You know, there is a number of places, when you Google things over Bible app, and you can put in there, I will, and search for places elsewhere that Jesus talks about, I will. And I did that. And in Matthew 11:28, and we all know this one, come to me all you who are weary and burdened, and he says, I will give you rest. Does anyone know that one off by heart? You know, we've shared that amongst ourselves quite often and encouraged each other with this. It means a lot to us when things are crushing in on us, when things get too busy, when things are not going right, and it all seems too much. Jesus says, I will give you rest. This is Jesus' commitment to us. What a relief to be able to hand things over to him and by his grace see the bigger picture. Today life moves so quick. It's hard to keep up, or is it just me? It might be something to do with my age, perhaps. But Jesus is also talking about spiritual rest that he wants to give us. Another verse that also is similar to this, that helps lift us up when things are busy and we're feeling overloaded. John 14:27, peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. I give. The inner peace we have, knowing that we are right with God because of Jesus' sacrifice on the cross and the future he has planned for us. I don't know whether you listen to the media at all, but this week I had an opportunity to, as I travelled and as I worked, to listen to the radio. And you can't go through a day without the words global warming coming up. This topic has become quite a focus here in Australia. Many school students took off a day off school to demonstrate, and there have been demonstrations in different places around the country to try and motivate our politicians to do something or to do more. And the media seems to bring it to our attention quite often. This week our Shire councillors had a meeting on whether we have a climate emergency here in the Bega Valley. And it seems that this is the way the vote went. So we do have one because they voted it that way. We hear reports about Syria, Turkey, ISIS, the Kurds. Things are not good over there. The economy, they tell me, is slowing down. There's a trade war between America and China. You don't want to hear the rest. It's too depressing. You could go on and on. I've just highlighted a couple. Overall, it's pretty depressing what you hear from the media. How needed is the gift of peace that Jesus offers in this world today. Another place that Jesus says, I will, and this is just an important one, and we all know this one too. I don't think I'm really telling you much new here this morning. John 14, 1-3. I would try and tell it to you, but I'm going to read it, make sure I get it right. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God, trust also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you. And now I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, this is where it comes in. I will come again to receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also. I will. This is Jesus' commitment. I will come back. I will return. It's more than a commitment. I've used the word commitment this morning, but it's a promise. Jesus is taking responsibility to make that happen. I will come back, he says. The Bible reveals to us how this world will end. Jesus' coming will bring an end to the world we know now. What it will be like where we live here in Bega, in the Bega Valley, just before he comes, I don't know. We'll have to wait and find out. There are other places in the Bible where I will is used. I've just picked out a few. But I want to share this verse from Paul in Ephesians 3:20. With God's power working in us, God can do much, much more than anything we can ask or imagine. Jesus has made the commitment. So where do we sit? Danny Simpson was 24 years old when he decided to rob a bank. He was short on money. So he grabbed a pistol and he robbed the bank. He was caught by the police. He was jailed for 6 years for stealing $6,000. But the gun he used in the robbery ended up in a museum. The .45 caliber Colt semi-automatic turned out to be an antique made in 1918 by the Ross Rifle Company. His pistol was estimated to be worth close to $100,000 by the collector's market if it had gone to auction. If Danny Simpson had have known what he had in his hands, he wouldn't have ended up in jail. Do we realise what God has made available to us? Have we allowed him to train us to be that safe place where we can find peace, and all the time watching for his coming? All these I wills that I have talked about this morning would mean nothing if Jesus had not been raised from the dead. Because he lives,